It's Wednesday. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Wherever you're joining us from, welcome back to the Light 'em Up Lounge. Welcome to another inspiring, enlightening, and truly exciting live show with a very special guest joining us live from Sin City today, very close to where we actually met in person for the first time. And I'm super stoked and very happy that Adam Levine is here with us today from the League of Fat Bastards. I've been looking forward to the show for a while. Adam, it's great to see you again. I would love to sit right next to you or probably hang out at 8 and enjoy a cigar, but this is sort of the second best thing to that. I'm super excited to have you. Thank you very much for joining us. And Adam Levine, the League of Fat Bastards, welcome to Light 'em Up.
Hey, thanks, man. And I really appreciate it. And I do apologize if there's a little bit of noise in the background. I did want to go and sit in the 8 lounge, as you mentioned, here at the Conrad Casino. Hopefully, if someone from Conrad is looking, they can comp me for mentioning them a few times on this. But I'm sitting in the main bar here. But great to be here and really appreciate the opportunity, mate.
Well, it's all perfect. You know, thankfully Zoom is doing a great job at noise cancellation these days, so we don't really hear much. But you have a great backdrop there, and what a nice place to enjoy a cigar. I know for you it's still sort of not early morning, but it's still 11 a.m. Perfect time to have a drink and a cigar, I think. But talk us. Well, is that still water or?
No, it's water. It's only water. Trust me, it's water. Water. Water.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, and you see, that's the beautiful thing. We have Ferdinand joining us at 2 in the morning from Kuala Lumpur. We have Adam joining us at 11 in the morning from Vegas. And then we have pretty much everybody in between, whether it's Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Africa, Europe, the US, Middle and South America. It's always great to have people joining us from all over. For everybody joining us on the Facebook live stream, as always, please make yourselves heard. If you have questions, comments, chime in. Let us know if you have any questions for Adam, and I'll very happily forward them and bring them to the show here. Let's dive right in. Adam, the League of Fat Bastards is so much more than just a cigar brand, given that it was built around an idea and a vision of strengthening and fostering the bonds between men in particular. I know we're very happy that the cigar industry and community has become so much more inclusive, and that there's a tremendous amount of great women joining the industry now, or being cigar enthusiasts and joining the cigar community. But you have focused the vision and the purpose of the League of Fat Bastards around a very interesting idea, and that is to shed some light on men's mental health issues, and to also strengthen and foster the bonds and the connection between men through products that they enjoy, through great luxury and consumable products that bring pleasure. How come? I mean, why did you choose the cigar as a vehicle to transport your message? How did you get into it? And then we'll talk more about
Sure.
the repercussions of that and how the League of Fat Bastards came along. But why cigars in the first place?
So, firstly, by the way, you're hired, because that was a great pitch, and you understand it exactly. So, anytime you need a job, mate, you're hired. But yeah, look, the League of Fat Bastards, or L.O.F.B, is it's 100% a mission focused company, and we are focused, and our mission is about making a positive impact on men's mental health globally. That's our core mission, and that's why we exist. Now, how do we do that? Is exactly as you've suggested. The first and primary way that we do that is by creating opportunities and moments in time where men can start to connect and have deeper conversations about issues that we all face on a day-to-day basis. And the reality is we do all face these issues on a day-to-day basis. We do that through organising events in store, through organising events in other restaurants and premise and stuff like that. But what we're mainly focused on is around creating a permissioning for men to be able to communicate. And that permissioning comes from having individuals like myself, from having sports people, from having high-profile business people come to talk and explain about their mental health issues that they've been through and how they have dealt with it. So that starts to normalize those conversations, right? So that's what's really important. We just happen to sell bloody good cigars, right? We just happen to sell, in the very near future, brilliant non-alcoholic beer. We just happen to sell other products, right? So the products that we sell are essentially the means through which we create that environment. And to be perfectly honest with you, they're the means through which we fund our core mission. Sorry, Siri, go away. It's the means through which we fund our core mission as well. And so funding the core mission is all about our give back promise. And our give back promise is that 40% of the profits that we make, we give back to a range of national organizations and NGOs that support mental health recovery programs for first responders, for war vets, for active military, for people in the medical field, for people of service, essentially, who provided service to us in America or in Asia or wherever it might be. And we have national groups in each of those countries. And we give 40% of our profits back to those organizations, to make a tangible difference. So that's the core idea, essentially. And what we wanted to do, what I wanted to do when I built this business, was to create this global movement, to create this global tribe, league, really, of individuals who shared a common passion around quality products, but also felt that there was a need to create and shine a light on this scourge of this mask of masculinity that all of us men are told we have to wear and that we're born up with from day one. And so that's really what it's about. And, you know, the fact that we make bloody good cigars, Ferdinand will tell you, he's our distributor in Singapore, you know, and in other parts of Asia, and then we distribute all throughout the US. The actual quality cigar, which we'll talk about a bit later, is a great cigar. Why cigars? So there's a couple of interesting reasons. It's an industry that is a very old traditional industry. It's an industry that's quite tight and close. At the same time, it's an industry that we don't really have to educate a lot of people about the benefit of getting together and having a conversation, because we do that when we sit down and we enjoy the cigar, right? It's just a natural thing that we do as guys. So for us, it was a relatively, I'm going to say low risk, but it wasn't low risk. But when I say low risk in terms of getting the message out, because we could find that it was very easy for us to move into the industry, which I had a lot of passion about, a lot of interest in for over 25 years, never been in the business. But it was very easy for us to create a very strong point of difference around our cigar to stand out, because the principle of mental health, the principle of open conversations, of connectivity, was already sort of ingrained within the cigar community. It was just that no one had really bottled it up and no one had really brought it together as the core mission, the core part of the actual cigar itself, and shined a light on it. And that's exactly what we did. So that's that's really why the cigar. I mean, we have other verticals that we're going to move into as part of the consumption process and enjoyment, like non-alcoholic beer, for example. You know, obviously mental health and alcohol don't go well together, but at the same time, when you're enjoying a cigar, a lot of people want to have a drink with that. We're saying, fine, don't give up drinking, no problems. We want you, that's fine. But maybe on a Sunday afternoon, or maybe, you know, instead of having 3 or 4 beers, have 2 beers and 1 non-alcoholic beer, right? And so our focus is about creating, being an Aussie, we know what beer should taste like, right? We know how to make good beer. And so we've created a non-alcoholic beverage actually being produced in Sonoma, in California, which will be a West Coast IPA style non-alcohol beer that is unbelievable. So we're going to bring that out to market as well and start doing some pairings and those sorts of things. And obviously there's a massive market over in Muslim countries and obviously, you know, Malaysia being one of those, which is just humongous. So yeah, so I think the whole reason for bringing this cigar out, the whole reason for bringing the business out, was as a result of my passion that I have to make this positive global impact on men's mental health.
A couple of things that I want to dive a little deeper on. First of all, not just in every cigar, but in every business, in every endeavor, there's either a little or a lot of personal experience and character of the founder. And you've been very open and honest when launching the League of Fat Bastards that the reason you wanted to create the project the way it is now is you had your own struggles and you've had your own challenges with mental health in the past, even though being a very successful businessman and having traveled internationally and exploring a lot of what's happening out there. How much of Adam Levine is in the League of Fat Bastards?
So I'm 53 years old. I've got 3 kids. I've been married for 30 years. March this year is 30 years.
Bravo,
I started with zero. Well, when my wife and I got married, we had $486 in the bank. Right, that's all we had. And so it's been 30 years of hard work. Is the honest answer. I was fortunate enough that I had a couple of brain cells, so I was able to become a lawyer. And throughout that process, I also then got involved in investment banking and principal investments and financial services and stuff like that. So, at the time I was sort of late 40s, everyone was sort of looking at me from the outside and saying, oh, he's a pretty successful guy, he's done really well, et cetera, et cetera. February 2019, we're at a holiday house that we have up on the Gold Coast, on northern Australia. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, my whole world felt like it was collapsing around me. I couldn't breathe. I woke up one morning and I literally was in tears. I just felt, we had had some wins, we had had some losses, we had some successes, we had some failures, but there were a whole lot of issues and there was no one particular thing that was going on at that time, but it was the culmination over time of all of the stresses that I had during that period that I think there was, as they say, a straw that broke the camel's back. And it really wasn't much. It was something minor where it was too much. And I literally went into meltdown. I couldn't think straight. My head was in a cloud. I was unable to think rationally. It was like, I described it very much like a waterfall of emotion. You can't stop this waterfall of emotion and of tears. I was unable to communicate with the outside world. I didn't want to get out of bed. For 3 months, I was in a state where I was just constantly either sleeping because I was exhausted mentally, or I was crying, or I was contemplating how I was going to end all of this, because for me, the exhaustion, the pressure, the stress, the sense of failure was overwhelming. And I felt that by being in the position that I was in, all I was doing was continuing to hurt those people that I loved, my family, my wife, my children, that I was of no use to them anymore. And in fact, they'd be better off without me. Now, of course, they are totally illogical thoughts. They are, of course, totally irrational thoughts. But when you're in a depressive mode, when you're unable to think rationally from an objective perspective, in your head, it's actually really makes sense, right? It makes sense in your head at the time. So I got to a point one day as part of my recovery, and I was in the city in Melbourne, and we have trams that run in Melbourne. And it was towards the end of this 3 months, and I just sort of said it's enough. And I remember sending a text message to my wife, telling her how sorry I was for all the pain that I'd caused her. and that I told her that everything would be all right, and that she'd be looked after and whatever else. And I was this close, this it was milliseconds from jumping in front of a tram that was going by. And for some reason, there was this thing inside me that said, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. You've got more, you've got more, you've got more, don't do it. And I pulled myself back. Now, have I got more? The interesting thing was, as part of the recovery process, I went through a whole analysis of why this happened to me, right? And the thoughts that went through my mind was, I don't want to dwell on why did this happen to me. I actually want to change my mindset. And I want to think about, why did this happen for me? Why did this happen for me? Not to me, but for me. And I suddenly realized why this happened for me. It's because my mission, my role, my job in life is to actually help other men deal with their struggles so that they don't go through the same issues that I went through. It was a catalyst. It was this shining light that came down to me to say, Adam, your job, your mission in life is to actually make this positive impact to help other guys who are struggling. That's what you're here to do. That's why it happened for me. Because if I hadn't been through that, or if I had ended it all, I couldn't do that. And so this was this amazing revelation for me. And that was the inspiration. That was the drive to create this League of Fat Bastards. Now, why cigars as fat bastards? What's really interesting is part of my recovery process was 3 bits of advice that someone gave me. And this wasn't a psychologist or a psychiatrist. This was a normal doctor. So she gave me 3 bits of advice. This is really important, guys and girls, because I reckon everybody can use this. The first thing is stress, anxiety, depression. 3 things. First thing is declutter your life, right? So decluttering your life means getting shit organized. Now, when I say get shit organized, I don't mean just getting your table cleaned up, your office cleaned up, which is important, but get your companies, your structures, your businesses, your family situation. Get your humidor organized. That's what I went and did. That was one of the first things I did, man. We've all got humidors, we've got shit everywhere, we've got whiskey collections, everything. I put everything in order, I categorized everything, I put it all together. Suddenly it felt, I felt good. Like, got rid of all this shit, suddenly felt good. That was number 1, declutter your life. Number 2, stop and smell the roses. So you can imagine, like, I literally was walking down the street and I would literally stop and smell roses outside the house. And I still do that. I actually still walk around and I'll always stop and smell beautiful flowers because I love that. But it's about appreciating life. It's about appreciating the goodness, the sun, just appreciating just things around us. But from a cigar perspective, stopping to smell the roses is all about appreciating the tobacco. It's all about appreciating the nuances around the 300 hands, that everyone knows and that Ferdinand will tell you, goes into this extraordinary process. And when you go and have the opportunity to visit, the plantations, and you see it from the tiny, tiny little seedling, and each week when they move into the bigger pots, it's just an extraordinary process. It's appreciating it. And then the third thing is learning to be kind to yourself. And learning to be kind to yourself means giving yourself time and space to do things, even just by yourself or with other friends, but things that are important to you. And so from my side, it's all about, when you sit and have a cigar, you have to give time to yourself because it makes you slow down. So it was a perfect process of recovery as an assistance in that process. So I say it, I know I was emotional beforehand because I do get emotional when I think about it, not for my own sake, I think about it for my wife and children's sake, and I do get emotional about it. But then when I talk about this recovery and why this happened for me, you can see that I'm so much happier and I've got so much energy about me because I'm so passionate about it, and you can see how you can get to the other side. And that's what it's about. I want people to see, you know what? There is an opportunity. There's a reason to move through, but you've got to follow a process to get through it.
Well, first of all, Adam, I can only thank you wholeheartedly for so openly sharing that part of your history and your story. And having been through a severe illness myself when I was 20, which very much affected me not only physically but mentally as well, I can very much relate to what you're saying. And not only is it wonderful to turn that negative emotion and energy into such a powerful tool and inspiration, and turn it into an asset, um, which then becomes something much bigger and has a positive impact on other people's lives. I find that tremendous. And also one thing that I realized myself, the three steps that you mentioned were very much part of my own journey of getting out of the shit as well. Even though subconsciously, and it helped me to reconnect with my own roots. You know, I come from a very simple and humble background with a poor family, but what we had was the family table. So I was actually gifted with an extremely blessed and warm and caring family background. But it was only through my struggles later in life, and the sensory connection. For me, it was the wine that sort of brought me into this, because I ended up at the Wine and Spirit Education Trust. But it was when I sat there with the first blind tasting glass in front of me, where suddenly you could smell something, you could taste something that kind of reminds you of the beauty out there, and the fascinating thing that is God's creation around us. And without being religious or spiritual in that sense, and it doesn't matter if you or anybody out there has a religious belief in that sense, but just to focus on your perception, become more aware of who you are, where you are, and what's around you. That has such a grounding effect, and it sort of puts you back in place, where also I feel you realize we're not that important after all. And sometimes when everything is challenging and there's so many hurdles and obstacles around us, we feel like we're super important. And it's almost an egoistical motive, right? When you feel that, oh my God, I have it the worst. Everything and everybody's against me. And flipping that around and realizing, there's so much more out there. There's so many more important things, and you can take what's happened to you, turn it into a positive something, and then you really have a power to change something and to do something positive.
I mean, just I want to give
Fascinating.
I want to give something just to all the guys. Okay, I don't know how many of you are married or have got spouses or whatever, right? So I'll give you a really simple story. So 2 weeks ago, no, maybe 3 weeks ago, my wife, we had a freezer. We have a freezer, like where you freeze food, right? And being a Jewish wife, she's got plenty of chicken soup in there, and she's got meat, and she's got this, and she's got whatever, right? But of course, she just keeps shoving shit in the freezer, and we never bloody defrost the freezer, right? So what happened was the freezer broke down, and stuff's, and she got really upset, and stuff started, obviously going off, and she said, "Oh, fuck, I'm upset. I've lost this, I've lost that. The soup's gone and the meat's gone." And I said to her, I said, Reg, I said, Regina, firstly, maybe think about it. Not why is this happening to me, but why has this happened for me? Why is it the refrigerator went bust and the food's gone off? Why did that happen for me? And I can tell you why. It's because you've got to clear that shit out. Because we never fucking eat the food. All it's doing is it's just taking up space, right? And I said, and I said to it, and you know what? It's a bit of a cleansing process. And she said to me, you know what? You're right. Then she went into the pantry, like the dry goods pantry, got rid of old stuff, cleared that up, lined things up, made things look nice, went out and rebought some beautiful stuff. And she felt so good. And she bought herself a bunch of flowers, and she bought herself a candle and whatever else. Knock yourself out. But let me tell you, when your partners, your wives, your whatever, complain about, why did this happen? Why did this person cancel on me? Why was this person a bitch to me? Why were you out fucking all night? Whatever. Just take that and say, no. Think about, why did that happen for you? And as soon as you do that, trust me, guys, the girls are going to turn around and say, yeah, you know what? Why? Little trick, right? Little trick there. It's bloody good. I can see Andy over there nodding. He must have used a similar trick. How long you been married for, Andy? You married? How long you been married for, man?
Oh, 44 years.
There you go. You're a bit more expert than I am, man. You're a little bit more expert than me.
I don't know. You sound very similar to the recovery that I'm in. So, it's just kind of chuckling at it. My wife, we have 40 fruit trees on our property, and my wife freezes a lot of the fruit that we keep. So as a result, we have 3 refrigerator freezers. One breaks down, it goes in another. But yeah, I like that. Clearing away the wreckage of the past.
That's what it's about.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. It's good. It's good.
The other fascinating part, Adam, is that what you described, the magic of the cigar bringing people together, is something that we often discuss here on the show, and we experience that naturally, probably after having had a couple of cigars, and then you become part of the community. You frequent your local lounge more often, and you start to build those relationships. That's when you realize that there's this magical ability of a cigar to build bridges and to bring people together. And you must have experienced the same thing, but that very natural experience you have beautifully woven into your struggles in life and the vision that you have for the League of Fat Bastards. So it's almost a natural match and the perfect fit in that sense, right?
And that's exactly right. So that's what I was sort of talking about beforehand. So I'd been a cigar enthusiast since I was 25. I started when I was in London, and I was working in London, and I lived in a very famous street in London called German Street, Jermyn, in Piccadilly. There's a couple of people nodding there. So it's famous not just for shirts, but it's very famous. It's very expensive. Yeah, exactly. Very expensive shirts. Exactly, Macy. Exactly. But it's also famous, as we know, for JJ Fox, right? And so I was very lucky. I was living above, well, actually next door to another very famous place called Fortnum and Mason's, which people may know, which is a high-end sort of store, and they do beautiful afternoon tea. And first time ever, this is in, so 95, it's 95. So it's just as the boom is starting, right? And I walked into JJ Fox, the first time I'd been into a cigar store, and I just fell in love with this aroma. I fell in love with walking into this walk-in humidor. I'd never experienced anything like that before. And it was just, to me, this exceptional environment of sophistication and relaxation and conversation. And what was interesting at the time, I was working for a very conservative, very well-known English investment bank called Schroders, and J. Henry Schroder, and which is owned by the Schroder family. Anyway, which became Citibank, and it's Salomon Smith Barney. And they were in the day where you could still smoke cigars in offices, like literally in the office. And so the directors and the big wigs and whatever would be walking around smoking their cigars. And here's little old me, this young Aussie twerp, coming out of, Melbourne. And I'm looking at these guys and you know what? Fuck you, I'm going to smoke a cigar as well. And so the Aussie in me just sort of said, oh, I don't care. And that's how it started, man. But yeah, so the love of cigars has always been there. And the conversation that cigars create, that natural conversation, is there. But it's the permissioning of going deep. And there's a rule that I find, which is a social rule, which I'm sure everyone will agree with. So when you get together with a group of people, he who goes first and goes deepest sets the tone, right? And so if I start the conversation and we're talking about this, and I'm talking about not necessarily the trouble that I have, but if I'm talking about what I'm feeling now and explaining to people, what I'm really anxious because, we're in the process of doing this, or I'm a bit concerned about this part of, I've got a real issue with my wife at the moment because of this, or whatever it is, right? You set the tone in that conversation, And then what that does is that starts what I call this permissioning process for others to communicate at that level. So the idea of L.O.F.B is not so much about saying, hey guys, just get together for a conversation. No, the idea of L.O.F.B, and the reason why we have these high profile individuals talking about their experiences, is to set that tone and to permission people to say it's okay to talk about this, and you should feel comfortable in doing that. Now, obviously, not everyone does feel comfortable, and that's cool, no problems. But the fact that they may hear something, it's all about the takeaways that someone might hear from listening to others. And that's not being greedy, and that's not being selfish. That's participating, but in a different way. The presence of someone just being there is participation in itself, right? That person may be suffering loneliness, lack of social connection, whatever it might be. The fact that they're there and being part of a group, that's really positive. That adds energy to a group. When you see a mate that's there, you see a guy that's there, that's positive. They don't necessarily have to talk, but it's all about creating this relationship, I suppose is the best way to put it.
Adam, you brought up a fantastic point that I haven't really thought about in that way, but I find it fascinating when you say that he who goes first and goes deepest sets the tone, and thus you create an ambience or an atmosphere where people feel empowered to speak up or feel safe to express discomforting thoughts is beautiful. And just to give you an analogy or a story from my past, I worked in the hospitality industry for a while, and when you work behind the bar, for example, it's almost like an unwritten rule that you don't talk about politics and sports and religion, and there's a plethora of topics that you better not touch because it could create discomfort in your guests. And to a certain point, I totally get that. But I feel that over the years, we've cultivated the idea of let's not go really deep, just scratch the surface and rather have a superficial conversation because that's safe territory and everything else is just trouble potentially down the road. But there's something beautiful and enlightening, and it frees you up when you create the opportunity for people to have meaningful conversations about stuff that really matters and talk about things that are not always beautiful. Another thought that comes to mind is whenever you meet somebody, the first thing is like, hey, how are you? And nobody really cares how you truly are. And sometimes I realize when you tell them, you know what, I'm not feeling great today, that's when they're like completely shocked and taken aback, and that then only then they stop in whatever they're doing and turn around and be like, oh wow, why is that? And that's a door opener to meaningful conversations. And I feel that we don't have enough of that. And for you to say L.O.F.B has also been created to foster those conversations and to be a door opener for even uncomfortable conversations to be had, it's fascinating and mind-blowing to me.
Uncomfortable conversations are the way you grow, right? Growth only comes with being in an uncomfortable situation in any form of life. And I don't want to go too deep around that sort of stuff, but my experience over that period says to me, just as my personal experience, says to me that the only times that I've really learned, is when either I've failed or whether I've made a mistake or whether I feel uncomfortable around certain circumstances, because that's when you have to actually delve deep to understand what's happening around you and to try and find a way forward. And hopefully what happens over time is that you learn from that. Obviously, if you don't learn from it, it's a problem. But, going through it, I actually think, again, not why is this happening to me, but why is this happening for me, can be a very empowering and personally a personal growth journey. And having uncomfortable conversations. We always, around our family, table, we'll have some uncomfortable conversations. But my kids have been brought up that way. Do you know what I mean? And so no one's afraid to share their views. No one's afraid to express the way they feel. No one's afraid to raise a difficult topic, including my children towards myself or towards my wife. And, you know, I don't know, that's just the way we've sort of done it in our family, which was different to the way I was brought up, because the way I was brought up was very much around, my mother was, you know, she used to describe herself as the peacekeeper in the house, and do you know what I mean? And so there were no difficult conversations ever had. And I think that's probably me going to the other edge or to the other side, do you know what I mean? So I felt that I missed that out. So it's interesting. You know what I mean? It's really, it's an interesting concept. Just on that topic, because I tried to say, so this is one of the things that's really interesting around sitting and having family dynamics and conversations. One of the things that and I know this is a bit different to the mental health, but just, I mean, family dynamics and family relationships are really important to mental health, obviously. And what's a man's role in a family, you know? So, you know, I've actually written a book, which I wrote in 4 days, didn't sleep, 199 pages, 46,000 words. I just had it converted to an audio book. It's 8 chapters, and to be able to download it off our website. And at the end of each chapter, it basically has some difficult questions, self-analysis questions. It has a whole range of just guides around ideas and thought starters, and some practical solutions and tips. But one of the things, and it's all based on my own experiences, right? And that'll come out soon. But one of the things that I focus on, well, the whole thing is actually focused on smashing this mask of masculinity. And I talk about this mask of masculinity, which I think is a major issue as for us men in these days, in terms of where do we fit into society and how do we fit into society. And because we're all similar sort of age profile. There's a few people a little bit younger, obviously, but you know, we were brought up to you know, be tough, be stoic. Masculinity is all about being strong and brave and not crying and not getting upset and just toughen up, princess. You know, even since you're a little boy on the playground, you know, you fall over, get up, mate. What's your problem? Get up. And what happens over time is, you know, then you move into a family life, and all of a sudden you've got this provider syndrome, where it's the male's responsibility to go out and earn income. It's the male's responsibility to provide security. It's the male's responsibility to do this, that, and the other. And there's no one you can turn to. There's no one you can talk to. You know, you've got issues at home. You've got issues at work. You've got issues with mates. You've got issues with this. You've got health issues. And everything just boils up and boils up and boils up. And that's why so many of us explode. And so, you know, one of the things that I've found in taking a hammer blow to this mask of masculinity is actually creating this safe environment within our family of open and vulnerable communication. And open and vulnerable communication, not just me to my children and my wife, but my children and my wife to me as well, where you can bring any issue to the table and everyone can talk about it. You know, and I think it's really important because the realities of life are families are very essential to most men, not all, don't get me wrong, but to most men. And, you know, we spend a lot of time playing politics and trying to get right in business environment, work environments, but we often don't think about the bigger impact at home, and the fact that if we don't really work on that, if we don't really engage in that, we're not really present in that, that's a much bigger issue than what we do at work, right? So I just wanted to raise that because I think it's really important for us guys to take a positive mental step and think, what are my circumstances at home? How do I communicate? What are the boundaries? How do we open up this conversation? Really important.
On that note, Adam, do you feel that maybe as a consequence and as a counter trend to that, it feels like today sometimes it's almost frowned upon for men to be men, and you have to take a step back, and it's sort of the opposite effect, where certain men might even be afraid of standing up to the role of masculinity and being comfortable in that position, if you know what I mean. And I'm trying to phrase it carefully and respectfully because it might be a sensitive topic, of course. But do you know what I mean? And
yeah, look, I think you know, you can go around the room and you can ask, you know, ask John, ask Macy, ask any of the guys, right? You know, what does it mean to be a man? and you'll get 10 different answers, right? And I think this is part of, the problem. Not the problem, I'm not going to say it's a problem. I think it's part of the shift in society, which I actually think is a good shift. Because previously, when you think about it in the 40s, 50s, 60s, what's a man? A man is someone who provides for his family, goes to work, is stoic, can deal with all the issues, whatever. I'm not sure that's the case today, which I think is a good thing. Yeah, keeping your word, absolutely, right? That's a man, absolutely. I think just being vulnerable, being honest, being present, I think that's really important. Being present, and being present, whether it's with your family, whether it's at work, whether it's with your mates, having your phone switched off when you're doing those things, I think is really important. But if you go around the room and ask everyone what does it mean to be a man, I think it's a challenging question. And then of course you have all of these very interesting scenarios of where people say, well, you shouldn't define someone by their gender, and you should define them just by their personality and their individuality. So that's a whole new way of thought. And within our family, again, I'm happy to share, not me, but with one of my siblings, who's she has two daughters, and one of the daughters is going through transitioning to a male. And that individual is 17. And a lot of people have got a lot of different views around that, right? And everyone can have their own view, and you don't have to share that view, and I'm not asking anyone to share a view on it. But what I'm saying is that this concept of what a man is, what a woman is, gender identity, fluidity, all this sort of stuff, it's fucking hard. It's fucking hard.
And also because I think there's so much uncertainty around these topics now. And we have all the choices in life nowadays. There are so many opportunities for every single person to express herself, himself, in whichever way you want, right? All of that creates challenges and uncertainty as well. And I think that's also part of the reason why, more than ever today, you see so many young people struggling, and so many young people battling mental health issues, because it's almost like there's no set of rules, there's no clear path, there's nothing to cling on to.
But you hit something there. There are way too many people being diagnosed with mental disorders that don't have mental disorders, but a lot of them get put on medication that does more damage than good. And that's one of the problems with today's society and medicine. I have a kid who is a non-binary child, okay? Not male nor female feeling. And the psychologist that they went to tried to tell them they were clinically depressed. And my kid almost killed himself, okay? He went off the meds, no offense to marijuana smokers, went to smoking marijuana and hasn't felt suicidal since. Doesn't take any depression medicine, none of that stuff. So that's one of the problems we have in today's society, is people being over medicated for diseases they really don't have.
Andy, man, I agree with you 100%. It's also easy to classify someone as being depressed or having anxiety. As anyone who's been through a deep process like that will know, it's very different to feeling a bit nervous around something or feeling a bit upset and under the weather to actually being clinically depressed or anxious, where you're at a point where you're thinking about, is life worth living, or I can't function in society, right? And it's this whole concept around in particular gender fluidity and movement and stuff like that. You know what? From my side, I just turn around and say, and this is how I sort of deal with all this stuff. It's like, fuck it. You know what? You do whatever you want to do. If you're not hurting anybody, and you're not fucking, if you're not hurting anybody else, right? And you're an adult, and I think that is a slight difference between people that are young and people that maybe a little bit more mature and their brain has developed a little bit to be able to make a bit more cognitive decisions. Outside of that, mate, you want to fucking be a cat? Be a cat. I couldn't give a fuck. I just want people to be happy, and I want people to be productive. And if that's going to make you a happier human and productive, who cares? Do you know what I mean? Like, who gives a fuck? It's irrelevant. And, you know, I think that's a positive in the sense that because people are becoming more open to it and accepting of it, although there's still this massive resistance. And my sister feels it, you know, obviously with her child. But the reality is, it is becoming more acceptable. Like, my children couldn't care less that their niece is going through this process. They say, yeah, big fucking deal. We thought she was always going to be a lesbian anyway. Okay, she wants to become a man, let her become a man. Like, who cares? That is an amazing attitude. Whereas my parents, very different attitude, right? So my parents in their 70s and late 70s, early 80s, oh, you know, he's going to have lots of problems later on. And it's like, what the fuck? Let him work it out. Like, Jesus Christ. Yeah, she may have problems. I've got problems. Look at me. I'm 100% male, right? I've got big fucking problems. So really and truly, if they're a happier person, good on them.
Amen to that, Adam. Macy, welcome, man. Good to have you back.
Good evening, I guess. Well, I don't even know what it is in Australia. So good, whatever.
I'm not in Australia, man. I'm in Vegas. I'm in Sin City.
Oh shit! Well, good. The time doesn't even exist where you are. So I mean, there are no
right,
clocks. There are just ATMs and ways to get money that you can use for wise and everlasting generational wealth building purposes.
I don't gamble. I'm here in Sin City and I don't gamble. I literally do not gamble.
Well, there are other ways to waste money there too. So, you know, hopefully none of those apply. If someone approaching 40, yeah, not worth it. Just smoke a good cigar. Really, just
exactly.
First of all, I have smoked one of your cigars because I got one on the Olla de Nicaragua tour this year at Puro Sabor. I liked the blend. I like a little smaller ring gauge. I think it was like a 54, was a little thick. The cigar was a fat bastard.
So
I'd like to see it, you know, try it something a little thinner, I think.
You can get a Robusto. So the Robusto is a 52, right? So you can get a Robusto. So the Toro is 54 is what you might have got. You might have got the Toro.
It was a good Habano. Tasted very classic Nicaraguan. Tasted like Ecuador Habano wrapper. Very clean.
Love it.
Now, I'm usually a Maduro smoker, but it was good in the afternoon.
That's good, man.
Clean with some Flor de Caña.
How good's the Flor de Caña, mate? Seriously, it is the best, huh?
I actually just in Fort Lauderdale. Well, we'll get there. I found one good thing about my recent trip to South Florida. Well, two. Neptune Cigar, awesome. Father's Day sale, awesome.
And we're there. We're in Neptune, so you can go to Neptune's and buy from Neptune's. Absolutely, in all their stores and online.
Very good. You're right. Yeah, with the Oya section, you are 100% correct.
Yep, that's where we are.
And actually, Neptune, the find was just they have a book of tobacco sheds from the Connecticut River Valley. I've never seen this before. So the nugget of the trip was this picture book and history of tobacco sheds, vanishing tobacco sheds in the United States. And just amazing find. But anyway, I was out for the fight of my life in this federal trial. I left a part of my soul at the courthouse on 2990 East Broward Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale, along with dealing with floods. I swam out of a courthouse in a suit. Never thought I'd do that before. Really an unhabitable area, Broward County. I don't get it, but so, I mean, I really don't. Anyway, but they do have Neptune, so I'll give them that. We're at the end of trial, just everything's going great. I mean, we've got some people with student loans on the jury. They're just, and a client of mine, a plaintiff, in response to a question about how her credit got hurt, answers that and then goes into how she read about these people scamming other people on the internet. Judge calls a mistrial. All of my sandcastle, just a wave comes crashing, destroys the sandcastle. got to redo everything. Before that, I got a 200-year-old tree in the backyard, part of why I bought the house. A third of it came down. I've got wall hanging planters falling, getting destroyed. They're part. I mean, all my freezer has been hurt. I'm losing my soup, and so my first question is, I really like this topic. It came at the perfect time for me. Do you have any tips other than great cigars, which talk about medicinal? I mean, medical cigar is a real thing, folks, and it's actually tremendous. I mean, for I can't think of anything better for my mental health actually than having a good cigar. Places like this, friendly people, interesting conversations that touch deep into tobacco and just all over the place. It's the best. And it's strange that some of my favorite people I've never met in person. I just, and I'm a pretty analog guy. So do you have any further advice for getting over things outside of your control, that when you feel like, damn, all my effort, all my work, and then things not even in my control are impeding my climbing of this mountain or pushing a boulder up a mountain? And second of all, I'm interested in your choice to go with oil, just tobacco related. You're interested, I'm interested in your choice to go with Oya as a factory, what it was like working with them, because that factory tour is amazing.
Frankie Martinez.
I'm so impressed with Oya. I mean, that factory tour is probably one of the, maybe even over my way, like maybe the happy. I can't think of anything better than the Oya factory tour. Thank you. Best wishes.
No. So look, thanks, Macy. Interestingly as well, I spend most of my time in Miami. So even though I'm Australian, I spend 5 weeks at a time in Miami because that's where the business is
my
based
condolences. My extreme.
No, it's good. I mean, no, I love it. I'm in Bell Harbour, right? So Bell Harbour's beautiful, right? And great shopping centre. Although I spend time in Fort Lauderdale as well. So it's interesting to me. How do you deal with shit that's not in your control? The reality is, acknowledge it's not in your control and there's nothing you can do about it. So move on, man. Right? That's the reality. And I often say this to my wife and to my kids: don't stress over it because there's nothing you can do. The important thing I find anyway is to worry about the things I can control and influence. If I can't control and influence it, there's no point worrying about it. All you got to do is just acknowledge it, and then you just deal with the consequences of what happens in the best way that you can. So I think a lot of people, in my experience, just my mates, worry about shit they can't control. So, if Trump comes to power and he's going to build another fucking wall or whatever he's going to do, don't worry about it because you can't control it. Well, that's all I'm saying, shit like that. So what you can control is who you vote for. That's a very different thing. I'm just, I use that as an example. So, I think that's the way that and I think the other thing is, when all the shit is going down, as I mentioned to you beforehand, it's really just stop and say, not why is this happening to me? Why is this happening for me? And literally stop yourself and literally ask yourself that question. And you will see some positives that come out of it, right? The mistrial, well, let's be honest, it's a mistrial. You probably get the opportunity to charge double fees, right? Because you go again, right? So, so there are a whole range of different things. But look at if you change the word for to the word from the word to, it suddenly becomes a positive analysis rather than a negative analysis. So I just say that. In terms of the tobacco journey, I love the fact that you went to Puerto Sabor. I was there. We had an amazing trip there for 5 or 6 days. Why did I choose Korea? So the reality is this. I was introduced to so I'm part of an organization which is called YPO, or Young Presidents Organization, which some of you may have heard, some of you may not have heard about. Anyway, it's a very sort of deeply connected international business organization, essentially. And we have a cigar group chat as part of that. There's about 700 members of it. And they turned around and said, Ferdinand, go to bed, man, by the way. If you need to go to bed. I'll speak to you in the next couple of days anyway.
I'll go to bed. I'll see you when you come to Singapore.
Yeah. I'll speak to you before then. I've got a couple of things I want to talk to you about. So it's fine.
Well, and we have to have that call with Rayed. And
Yeah.
This weekend, I'm talking to the guys from Malaysia for you, so they can push on.
Okay, see ya.
All right.
Thanks, mate.
Ferdinand. Thanks for stopping by, Ferdinand, and a very good night to you. Great seeing you, man.
So I was introduced to them through the network. I was introduced to them and also to Oliva Cigars. So Fred, who owns Oliva, is also a YPO. Juan is not a YPO, but he's good friends with a lot of YPO guys. And so I was introduced to them, and look, the reality is this. I spoke to Juan, this was in 2021, 2022. So it was towards the back end of the pandemic, right? And so I spoke to him via Zoom. We had a conversation, told him what we were doing, and he just literally fell in love with the whole concept and the idea, and could see that there was something new that was going to we could do in the market, and he was happy to jump on board, become a partner of ours. And the most amazing experience, however, was going through the blending process. So I was in Australia, I was in Melbourne, and he was over in Nicaragua in Esteli. And so what would happen is that we started with the blending process. He sent to me via UPS, he sent to me maybe, 10 different or 15 different bundles of 5 or 6 different cigars, blends. We would sit there, I gave him some ideas, some quite detailed ideas of what I wanted for the blend. He would give me, this, we would then, I'd get them. We would then jump on a Zoom like we're doing now, and we would try the cigars. And over in Zoom, we'd then say, like this, didn't like that, like this, didn't like that. Then 4 weeks later, he'd send me another bundle, maybe with 5 sets. We'd do exactly the same. And then we went through a third round, and we got to the last 2, and then we chose the current Cigar L. Now, the interesting thing with the Cigar L blend for us is I deliberately designed it to be what I call an everyman cigar. And what I mean by an everyman cigar is that it's approachable to everybody, because it was part of our mission that we wanted everyone to partake in an L.O.F.B cigar, to become part of our tribe and part of our community, right? So the structure of it was that we didn't want it to be too spicy, we didn't want it to be too light, we didn't want it to be too heavy, we wanted it to be just right. And so it's a, as you say, it's an Ecuadorian Habanos wrapper. It's and then a mixture, obviously, of it's Esteli and Yalapa.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you say it again?
Jalapa binder.
Yeah, correct. No, it's a Habano. No, the binder is Yalapa. Yeah, exactly. The Yalapa binder, and then it's an Esteli long pillar. And we decided that we're going to use a lot of the Viso and not too much of the Latero in that process. And obviously getting that balance right. I don't think about cigars as a third, which a lot of people do, which is fine. I think about cigars, I in my mind, I cut them horizontally. I don't cut them vertically, I cut them horizontally. So I say I want spice to be consistent, at around 10, 15%. I want, that earthy notes to come through at about 10, 20%. I want, the creaminess to be at this level, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not about the third, although that will naturally happen, obviously, as the combustion occurs. But in my mind, the way I design it is on that horizontal process. And that's the way we created this. Now, for me, having Hoya is an amazing partner. So we have a Cigar L, which is the first series, which we've got 3 Vitola. We're bringing out, as we speak, it'll be in July now, a Cigar O, and then we'll have a Cigar F and a Cigar B, obviously L.O.F.B, which will be our core line. We're going to have 5 Vitola, but Cigar O is going to be a San Andreas wrapper, which will be very different, and a slightly stronger flavor profile. So use more of the Lejero style, get a little bit more of that spiciness come through. Cigar F probably will be a Connecticut, although I personally don't like Connecticut, just me personally, but it's not about me. It's about what the market wants and what the market likes. And, Cigar B, I'm not quite sure at this stage. But having them as a partner for us was fantastic because, to be perfectly honest with you, it removed any doubt around the quality of what we were producing. Right? So if I went with some unknown producer with unknown name, unknown brand, it's a lot harder for me as a new entrant to the market. And, but the fact that it's made by Hoya and the fact that, Juan and the family are 100% behind us, not financially, but as a production house, really gives us a lot of credibility, to be perfectly honest, and I value that immensely. And his guidance and his insight is extraordinary. I had to teach him a new Yiddish word, mensch, right? So I don't know whether everyone knows the word mensch or not, but mensch it's a Yiddish word that means you're a good human, great soul, happy to give others, happy to help others, selfless, and giving, and will do anything to help. And so I call Juan, Juan my Nicaraguan mensch, because and he loves it. I'm teaching him all these Yiddish words. He loves it.
You're not teaching me. I grew up with Yiddish. Got right to my katkas,
There you go, man. Exactly. So dying language is
final
terrible.
line. You can talk to Reinhardt. He might be able to get you some Cameroon for that final line. I don't know. He might know someone, but just an idea.
I had a question about you want to do a Connecticut and you don't care for Connecticut.
Personally,
okay. I found over the years, I do not like CRV. It's too bitter for my palate. But
exactly.
I also discovered Ecuadorian Connecticut, which I absolutely adore because it's sweeter and a little bit less bitter.
Yeah. So I think you're right. It really does depend, obviously, in terms of the terroir, as I call it, in terms of where it's grown, and obviously the strain. So we haven't really worked on the Cigar F at this stage. I just sort of finalised the Cigar O because that takes time, as you can imagine. But yeah, look, there's probably a couple of different styles of Connecticut and shade versus non-shade. There's a whole range of things. But I find it, as you say, far too bitter, generally speaking.
There's an interesting tobacco, if you haven't tried it yet, called Talanga. Talanga is a Connecticut grown in Honduras or Nicaragua, no, Honduras, I think it
Honduras,
is.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's also a really good Connecticut to work with. It's less intrusive.
Who blends with that?
A couple of brands. Christoph did for a while.
Yeah.
They still do.
Right.
Another brand was oh God, what the heck are their names? All of a sudden I'm blanking out on
That's
his
okay,
names.
man.
But there's several brands that have used it in the past. I tried to use it on a cigar. I was trying to blend, but I couldn't find good quality wrapper. All I found was maybe a best binder quality, and
that's the thing, right? I mean, look, it's hard for anyone in the industry to find good quality wrappers, clearly, let alone if you're trying to run your own at home or from the factory or whatever you're trying to do. That's probably the hardest to find the quality wrapper, right? I've got an interesting question. Okay, so I've got an interesting question for the team, tobacco related.
Okay.
What percentage of the flavor profile do you think comes from the wrapper?
It really depends on the size of the Vitola, to be honest with you. If you're like, I'm smoking a Lancero right now, I would say a Lancero is about 70% wrapper flavor. Most cigars, I say, usually about 60-65%. You get into the big ring gauge, it's only down to about 40-45%. Now, that's my opinion. But when you get into the big ring gauges, all these people smoking 60, 70, 80, it's not whether they're good or bad cigars, but when you're getting into those big ring gauges, you're using the cheapest quality filler they can get. So you're not really getting an advantage to the wrapper. But very much like Macy, I'm a smaller ring gauge guy. I love to smoke stuff from Noel and stuff like that. His stuff, Rojas, is always smaller ring gauges, and he's very picky about his wrapper that he uses. I think the biggest.
I mean, it's interesting, Andy, you say that, right? Because I'm going to challenge everyone to try something. I mean, for those of us that are sort of know what we're doing, I'm sure a few of you have sort of taken the wrapper off on part of the cigar that you're smoking, right? So at the end, just to try the actual underlying puro sort of style. Okay. The problem with that is what part of the cigar is still touching your lips, right? Which has the most flavor, and your tongue, which has the most flavor profile. The wrapper. So what I want you to do is actually take off the wrapper at the part at not at the foot, but at the head, so to speak, right? Where you were smoking it from. So
like
that you remove. Sorry, say it again.
Like a shaggy foot.
Like a shaggy foot, but do it at both ends, right? Do it at both ends, so that when you're then actually smoking it or enjoying it, we don't smoke cigars in L.O.F.B, we enjoy cigars. When you're enjoying it, you will actually remove the full influence of the wrapper, because although Andy, you're right. I mean, again, I don't think there's a technical answer, because it does come down to palate and profile. But actually speaking, obviously with the Lancero, obviously as a percentage of volume, it's obviously much higher. But on most ring gauge cigars, if you think about the percentage of volume to wrapper, it's not even 5%, right? And so the reality is that the wrapper itself has its impact on flavor profile because of the touch that it has on your lips and tongue, because that's the consistency that's coming through. But in volume size, it actually is not a loss. So do the test, and I reckon you'll be surprised. And maybe on the next video call, it would be interesting to see what people come back with, right? To say, well, you know what? I thought it was 40% or 50%, but in fact, it's not. Do you know that? Because the reality is, with it off, it tastes totally different, right? And that's it when you're at the smoking part. Try it.
Another thing too, it also depends upon the tobacco you're using as a wrapper, because if you're using Connecticut broadleaf, it's going to be a lot heavier, taking over the flavor than if you're using, let's say, Connecticut shade. Okay.
Absolutely, and that's the flavor profile. But just think about it. If you've got some, what's a good example? You know, just a normal ring gauge, just a Corona, or or a Toro or whatever. The percentage is very small. Now it's still the same leaf, but you know, I reckon you'll find it's nowhere near what you actually think it is when you smoke it with the leaf part touching, or the cap as well, right? Because the cap's there as well. So it depends how you cut and what you do. That's another interesting question. What do people do around cuts? I'm interested to know.
What kind
V-cut,
of cuts?
straight cut. Yeah, V-cut, straight cut, hole punch. What is it?
Sometimes on a torpedo, I'll do a V-cut. Most of the time, I do either a punch, or I take my fingernail and I just pop out a section. You know,
I'm a fingernail guy as well, but usually it's a straight cut or the finger.
I'm the same. I'm a fingernail sort of guy. It's unbelievable how many people just use their fingernails, right? And I find it's, you know, it's sort of uncouth, but it's the aficionado way, right? All the guys that I know who are what I would call as serious dudes, like even you go to the guys at Hoya, when you're sitting there with Juan and his whole team, no one uses the cutter. They literally will unpick it, right? And that's what they do. It's quite extraordinary to see. And I thought, what are you doing? And then they told me, and I thought, okay, here we go.
if it's rolled right, you can do that.
That is the point. It comes to the quality, man. 100% quality.
Adam, quick question. We have ad staffs joining us on the Facebook live stream, and he was curious if your cigars are available in the UK.
They're available all around the world. Through outside of the US. Well, sorry, the two things. One is you can order them at the moment online through Cigar International, through Neptune, through Thompson's, through JR Cigars, through wherever, you know. So we're with all the top online companies, which means from the UK, obviously you can order there. Or if you want to order, you could outside of the US, you can order from us direct on the website. So just go to L.O.F.B.cigars.com. You can't order them to the US from us because we don't have a retail license at the moment, not yet. So the UK, we don't have any retail stores yet in the UK, is the honest answer. We just sort of don't have the bandwidth at this point. Although we are going to, I'm going to Intertobac in September. I'm not sure who else is coming. Yeah,
I'll see you
so
there.
I'm going to go, exactly. So I'm not sure who's going for that one. It's more of business one rather than a consumer one. But we'll build out some relationships for Europe.
Thanks, Adam. Back to the tobacco. When you create the blends for L.O.F.B, how much of it is you looking at the technical aspects of the tobacco, or you trying to hit a certain aroma and flavor target, and how much is based on a philosophical concept or trying to link the experience with a certain theme, a certain vision that links back to the core purpose of L.O.F.B, if that makes sense?
No, I understand absolutely. So the honest answer is, I was deeply very specific about Studio L. Like I said, it had to be what I called an everyman cigar. So it had to be something that was very approachable. So I set the test that I set to myself. I knew I'd be successful if a individual who enjoyed a lot of cigars, so let's just call him an aficionado, if that individual turned around and said, you know what, that's a bloody good cigar. It's actually a bloody good cigar, right? I don't want them to tell me it's the best cigar they've ever had. I don't want them to tell me it's the best cigar in the world, because that's bullshit. I know it's not. But I want to hear that it's a bloody good cigar. But at the same time, I wanted a novice to turn around and say, you know what, I really like that cigar because I can enjoy it. It's not too strong for me. It's a great, cigar to have at any time of the day. So they were the two tests that I set. And I promise you, I get those comments all the time from two different sets of people. It's amazing. So I think, good luck, good timing, good management, good palate, whatever it is, we absolutely nailed it. What I know for the Studio O, and I should say it ties in, that tied into the whole messaging, because we wanted to broaden the opportunity for people to engage with our brand because of our core mission for reason for being, obviously, right? The Studio O really is just now a step up of the flavor profile, but also changing, as I say, the wrapper, because I wanted something that could handle a bit more of a robust style constructions, but with the San Andreas, which obviously has that sweeter cherry chocolate sort of flavor profile to it as well. So again, very deliberate in terms of taking it up a notch. The F and the B, we haven't, as I said, one's going to be a Connecticut for the market. Don't really know. Could be the B could be like a Mexican. It's not a Mexican, some sort of Ecuadorian, do you know what I mean? Or even an Indonesian wrapper, right? Sumatran. Interestingly, Indonesia's now got a whole push to start to move back into the cigar market at the premium end. Because at the moment, obviously we all know about Sumatra wrappers, right? But the cigars that come out of Indonesia are shit, to be honest. That's just the reality. But they've got a whole government program now to look to reignite that market. So it's very interesting for people that are looking for things that are new and different in the market. Keep an eye out for Indonesia.
On that note, how difficult or challenging is it for you to relay your message or to translate what you're striving for to the manufacturer? And how do you manage taking your idea, your vision, and then having Hoya executing on that and offering you exactly the experience you're looking for?
I laugh because the person you should really be asking is Martinez, because I can tell you he fucking hates it when I say to him, I want it a bit more creamy or I want it less spicy. And he says, what the fuck does that mean? Less spicy, less creamy. So what I've done as part of my learning, and I've been to the factory now, I don't know, about 7 or 8 times over the last year, and actually done a very deep dive into the regions, the tobacco, the blends, style, and not just his factory, to all the factories in the big factories in Nicaragua, right? Because they're all mates, they're all friends. And as a result of that, I can now say to him, well, I think we should look at this particular tobacco from this region. We want more Viso, we want less, whatever. Let's think about this type of wrap, because I can, in my mind now, start to think that this type of tobacco will result in this particular flavor profile. And if I blend it with this other tobacco, that will create this type of melded product. And so the first iteration was me just using random words, right? Descriptive words. But the second now iterations become much more technical, which he appreciates. But we do a very detailed flavor profile analysis, which I've sort of put together, just my own way of doing things. I break things down into about 10 different flavor profiles and aspects. And it sort of works because I can now put the leaf and tobacco and region against it. Do you know what I mean? So
I find that question interesting in a twofold way. One is really when you think about people like yourself coming, and I mean it positively, from the outside into the cigar industry, and then trying to channel your ideas and your thoughts into the more technical aspect of creating a blend and crafting the cigar. On the other hand, though, I also find it interesting in a sense, how do end consumers perceive the actual product and the final cigar? And how do they try to sometimes dismantle a blend or think about the individual components and how that reflects on your experience? Taking that thought a step further,
the consumers. Yeah, you got to ask the consumers, man, in terms of how they go about it.
100%. But what I would like to ask you in that sense is, how important do you think it is for the manufacturer to share blend details and give the consumer a complete understanding of the individual components, knowing all well that a very small group of end consumers has had the opportunity to taste pure grade, taste leaves individually, and sort of figure out what does it actually mean, or how does L.O.F.B contribute to the blend?
So I think someone sort of said to me, and I think and cigars are a little bit like wine, quite a lot like wine, right? And I suppose I sort of developed, probably through overconsumption, quite a good palate around wine and particular styles of wine. And Reinhard, you would know, right? As you break down the various flavor profiles, even though it's a single grape, well, I shouldn't say it's a single grape, but if you just have a pure grape, like a Chardonnay or a Riesling or whatever, and that's obviously very different. For example, if you're going to have a Chardonnay de Pap, or obviously on the red side, so there's always blends, and you can, over time, as you know, the more experienced you become, the more you read and more knowledgeable you become, you can start to actually break down those profiles. So I think, when you pick up a bottle of wine and you look at the back, and the wine producer says it's made from, Pinot Noir from here and Chardonnay from there on a, or it's made from, a mixture of Grenache, Shiraz, and Mourvedre, for example. Not a lot of consumers are going to really, really understand that. It's the next part of what they say on the back of the label has deep black currant, with a touch of spice and a beautiful finish and portness and dryness that will stellar for 10 years. That's the part that the consumer basically understands. So what I think is relevant is, yes, provide the construction blend, but it's then the description of the flavor profile underneath it, which is probably more relevant. Now, not all producers do that, but that's, I think, relevant. So yes, I think for provenance, and more importantly for consumer education, you absolutely want to say where they are, but individuals will understand the descriptive language. I don't know, I don't know from the team around here, I'm not sure what their view is.
I love what you're saying, and I also enjoy the fact that you bring up the wine analogy. The two things that I think are drastically different from the cigar to the wine industry is, as a consumer, you have a lot of bottles that you can find on the market that would give you a single grape variety experience, because you can easily walk into a shop and try and educate yourself on different expressions of Chardonnay, because you can find a pure expression of Chardonnay grown in 10 different regions all around the world. Whereas if you walk into a humidor, it's not that you can buy 10 different expressions of Connecticut broadleaf just on its own. So the journey to educate yourself is way more complicated and intricate in the cigar industry. And the other aspect in that, and here comes my question, is the cigar industry is not particularly good at providing education to the end consumer. And I'm always wondering and I'm always curious, not only as to why that is, but more importantly, how can we change that? What's your
Noel Rojas sells a box that's called the Cigar Specialist, where he takes a cigar and then he takes each individual leaf and he rolls pachuchas in there, and he tries to educate you what each one of the different blends, each one of the different tobaccos tastes like, and then you get to try the actual finished product so you get an idea of the flavors. And I wish more people would do that. But
amen.
You know, and it's great that he does that, but I think it's I think it's a function of a couple of things. First thing is it's a function of the fact that let's be honest, there are not a lot of cigar smokers in the world, right? So the creating a market for education in a very niche, small global community is complex, I would think. And you know, having said that, you know, if you've ever smoked just a pure ligero from Yalapa or Esteli or from wherever else, tastes like shit. Right. And so, yeah, right. And so it's like you're never going to say, oh God, okay, why would I taste that? And as soon as you do one, you're not going to go and taste the others, right? Despite what region they come from, makes no difference. And so I'm not so sure that the breakdown in the, and I've done it because I did it because it's part of my own education, right? I'm just not so sure that's the way to necessarily educate people around smoking the individual leaf itself. I think
what could be a better way?
Well, I think it's actually the way I talk about it is I try to use words that people can understand in terms of flavor profile, and you sort of got to dumb it down a little bit, you know, like concepts around, you know, not everyone knows what demerit sugar tastes like, for example. Not everybody knows what cracker, you know, like a graham cracker tastes like, you know. And you see these, you know, in Cigar Aficionado and all these sort of places, some of these words that they use. But if you talk about, people understand coffee or espresso, they understand that. You know, people understand spice, pepper, they understand that. People understand earth, mud, they understand that. Like hay, green, you know, green grass. I mean, obviously that's something a little bit also for wine, but you know, if you and so I think it's about using those terms and making sure that also the retailers are educated, because that's where it comes from. The experience is when somebody walks into a retail store and they say, look, I don't know what I want, what do you recommend? And that happens, not us, because we go in there and we know sort of what we want, but 90% of the retail consumers have no fucking idea, right? And so they're really reliant on the retail store person who's probably not even the owner, some young punk. So it's about educating them. And there are no doubt some brands out there who will educate people about their own brand profile, clearly. But industry-wide, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's something that we need to think about from an industry perspective to, you know, create like a master sommelier style concepts within a, you know, but dumbed down within the cigar industry. I don't know. Good idea, mate.
Well, you know, there's also the situation, which I always say to people, 85% of the people who smoke cigars are your everyday cigar smokers. There's really only two things they need to know about cigars. They like it or they don't like it.
Yeah.
You know, but then you get this small percentage of people who really want to learn, they want to get educated. And I think this is where Reinhardt was going with this. There are a lot of people who are curious. In our Zoom group, there are a few that really want to learn. That's great, but are you doing it because you want to be a cigar weenie, or are you doing it because you want to get into the industry? You know, and a couple of the guys in our group have gotten in the industry. You know, they're making their own cigars. Are they going to make it? Who knows? But the basic cigar smoker, and I love when you sat there and you said you want an every guy's cigar. because that's an important fact. If you've got a specialized taste on your cigar, you're only going to get a very small percentage of people who may enjoy that cigar. And I used to say this when we were blending the Christoph stuff. He asked me, what do I think? I said, well, this isn't my palate, but I guarantee you the people will like this cigar because it's not too strong. It's not overpowering. It's a profile that a lot of people will enjoy. And those cigars have sold. I don't smoke them, but those particular cigars have sold.
Absolutely,
So
man.
your point of the everyman cigar, that's the best analogy for any cigar maker could make.
I think that's right. You know, particularly if you want to go on a, let's say, a commercial basis. So let's talk about commercial, right? So, and again, I'm very happy because we have on our website, we have a very we have a commitment to transparency where every quarter we post our sale, or we will be posting our sales, our gross profit, and our net profit in the business, because then we can show how much money we're actually giving away, the 40%, right? So we're very transparent. I've got nothing to hide. You know, let's think about this. You want to get into the cigar business, right? So, you know, we've, you know, this is our box, right, which you may have seen. You know, inside the box, you know, you've got your packaging, cigars. We've got a little, you know, insert, leaflet, whatever, wrapping, and all that sort of stuff. So if you want to get into the business and you want to produce something that's going to be distributed and has a chance of being commercially successful, first thing is you can't just produce a cigar because there are 20 zillion cigars. You've got to produce something that's different and actually has a story behind it. And it can't just be a story that I was born under a bloody, you know, in the Cuban cigar fields or whatever else, right? There has to be something that's, you know, because every man needs a dog. The beautiful thing is I don't have that story, right? But my story is very different. It's just very unique and personally for me. So that gives us a little bit of a head start. So you do this, you do your branding, you do your testing, you do your manufacturing, you do your distribution, you do your online media. The way most people do it, if you're an individual, is it's the street hustle to go around store by store, every store, host events, do that. That's a great pastime. It's not scalable. And, you know, really isn't a business. It's just a hobby. And if you can actually avoid losing too much money in doing that, you'll have some fun. To get a business up and running like this, so far, we've invested $1 million US. So we raised, so I put in initially $400,000 myself. And then I raised, before we launched, $600,000 from about, I don't know, 10 guys. Didn't take me, you know, it took me 24 hours, just put a few phone calls in and said, let's go. And that's $1 million, right? And with that $1 million, we produced 30,000 cigars, right? Obviously, that didn't cost me $1 million, what I'm saying, but we produced 30,000 cigars. All those cigars, we held launch events. I hired staff. And don't forget, I'm going big, sort of hard, right? So I got staff and, you know, marketing people and events people and things like that. We sold out of all of our first. We've got an order for the second where we've spent, I don't know, about $100,000 on the next round of stock. I think we spent about $60,000, $70,000 in the first round of stock, $100,000 on the next round of stock. And, you know, we'll run out of that $1 million at the end of, it'll be within 9 months, roughly, in 9 months, which includes, you know, travel, holding events, giveaways. Don't forget, you're giving away a lot of this shit. You're not actually making money on a lot of this shit, right? You're giving away a lot of it when you start. So, you know, we know that we're in the process. We'll do another raise. We're going to raise $3 million. We're in the process of doing that as we speak. And that will see us through for, you know, the F and the B into the future and growing that out, and also launching into the non-alcoholic beverage space as well. But, you know, for it to be a business, it's serious money. And so a lot of people have these dreams of wanting to start up a cigar business, and that's great. And I would encourage everyone to have a crack, don't get me wrong. But for it to be a commercial venture that's successful and has global presence and global brand, That's without spending money on advertising, right? I haven't spent 1 cent on advertising other than social media stuff, but no advertising in Cigar Aficionado or anything like that. You know, if you haven't got $1 million, and if you haven't got a whole lot of spare time, you're going to be struggling. And that's just to get going. It's not to keep going. That's to get going. So that's sort of economics.
Adam, I really appreciate you so openly sharing some of the behind the scenes and the insights into the business side of things as well, which is it's surely great to hear and probably something we don't talk about often enough, because there's a lot of mystique around the industry, and some people maybe like to keep it that way because an uneducated consumer is easy to fool, and for some people that might be an interesting proposition, if I may say so, with all due respect. But kudos to you for sharing all of this. Along that journey and with the money you've raised, what was the biggest vehicle for you? What was the most important instrument in order to get the brand to where it is today?
I tell you the honest truth is, when I went to PCA, not this time where I met you, but the time beforehand, right? When I'd sort of I didn't launch, hadn't even launched. I'd pre-launched cigars that were manufactured at that point by Hoya for me. And I went to PCA and I printed up this 1-page document, right? Talked about what we were doing. And I walked the floor of the PCA and I met everybody as much as I could and gave them a flyer. This is what we're doing, blah, blah, blah. We'd love to talk to you about maybe production and distribution, et cetera, et cetera. And everyone sort of thought, oh, yeah, nice idea. We've seen plenty of guys come. Good luck. See if you ever get to get out there and make it and whatever. What happened was we obviously produced Cigar, and we were able to, through some relationships, connect with people both at Cigar Journal and Charlie Minto with
Half Wheel.
Thank you. Yeah. Sorry, I'm like you, mate. Sorry, Andy, my brain's just gone fried. So with Half Wheel and also Cigar Snob and Cigar Aficionado as well. And they love the story, and they love the mission, and they love the branding, and they just think like, fuck, this is someone who's different in the industry and doing something good in the industry. We're happy to write it up, And Dave Savona at Cigar Aficionado said to me, so we never write up about new brands like this. We don't do it. Says, but we like what you're doing and we think you're doing a good job, mate. So we're happy to write something up. Now that all came about 2 weeks before this PCA. So everyone in the industry suddenly was reading all about League of Fat Bastards everywhere, right? And they're all thinking, So when I came to PCA this time, it was a very different experience for me, because as I was going around, people sort of had seen me before, and I'm not the sort of guy who just sort of blends in. I sort of walk in, go and chat, and people sort of recognize me, obviously. Boom. Everybody started coming to say, hey, love what you're doing. It's great. Let's talk about how can we get your stock with us, et cetera, et cetera. And that's sort of what happened, to be perfectly honest. It was just about getting that messaging out to the industry that we're real, that we're here, that Hoya's produced for us, we're ready to go, we're a serious business, we've got a serious structure, we've got serious people, we're not fucking around here, we'll put serious money in. And people took us seriously. And that's why, I was invited to go to Pittsburgh in January to go and see the guys at CI. They invited me to come to pitch to them as to why they should stock our cigars. The next thing is I get a $50,000 order from them 3 weeks later. Do you know what I mean? And so I've been very fortunate. Well, I'm not going to say fortunate. I think that the mission that we're on has been absolutely the thing that people appreciate and fall in love with. The cigar, they say, and people are very brutally honest, they say, you know, there are plenty of good cigars around, and there are trillions of great cigars. Says, but yours stands out because of what you're doing, and the name. To be honest, League of Fat Bastards. Everyone likes that. Everyone likes that. You know, and it's been a very interesting response that we've got to the name.
I love that. I get it, and I completely share your thoughts. Now, the other aspect is, and my question is, I think all of this is great to get recognition within the industry and get people excited to maybe bring the cigar in, but I think it doesn't always translate to the end consumer, because you realize that it's not even the majority of retailers who reads all the aforementioned cigar publications, which is shocking, to be honest. But then even more so on the consumer end, how big of a percentage of cigar enthusiasts do you reach through these channels, and where do you manage to go to them? Do you think that's the responsibility of the retailers truly to go the last step along the way?
No, the last mile. Yeah. So no. So our so you have to understand. So again, so part of our reason for being is to start the process of opening up communication and conversation. How do you do that? You do that through holding events. You do that through, it's core to our DNA. It's core to how we operate as a business to hold events at key retailer locations. So our mission is to drive traffic to retailers, not just your ordinary consumers that you would normally sell to, but with reaching out to other unique channels through, for example, first responder community. And that part of that is actually a street campaign where we're going out, talking to police officers, handing them cigars, talking to fire guys, handing cigars. You know, people are starting to, within those very specific communities, get to know the brands, right? They'll look it up, they'll tell their mate about it, whatever. Social media is also a very big thing for us. So, you know, we launched in late February, early March. You know, I've not bought one social media account. We've got 2,700, I think, something like that on our Instagram now. And they're all genuine people who are genuinely interested. We get a huge engagement rate in terms of likes and comments, particularly likes, from a whole range of people. So for us, it's about this connection, this connectivity, which is twofold. It's about building brand awareness through social media, but also organising these unique events. So we had one down in Miami, I just say, down at City Cigar Lounge down there in the city, down on the 2nd Avenue down there, with Tico, who owns that business down there. And it was dedicated for first responders. Now, Tico is a guy who's pretty well connected into the local police force. And, you know, he sent out invites to some people that he knew in the police force. They sent out some other invites to other people in the police force. We had 120 police officers turn up to an event where we had a mental health expert talking about managing stress, talking about post-traumatic stress issues, talking about relaxation techniques. So the conversation, the information they were getting was not just about cigars, right? We had, by chance, the Marlins baseball team, Miami Marlins baseball team, we had all of their coaching staff come, right? That was by chance. We didn't plan it, but that was by chance. They were there. They were just talking about issues around depression, around stress, around anxiety for sports people, right? For professional sports people. We had the chief of police of Miami, top bloke. He came to support us, right? Because of what we're doing and the giving back that we're supporting to obviously his officers. So through things like that, where you're getting people that you wouldn't normally get coming to cigar lounges and enjoying and engaging, and that's very unique. So we're not, this is the other thing, we're not interested in being in every single cigar store. We're not doing that, not at all. I don't want to be that. I want to be in those stores that understand our mission, that want to support our mission and work with us around creating events, and unique only in L.O.F.B events.
Beautiful. Adam, maybe a slightly controversial question on the whole mission and vision aspect.
Yep.
Whilst we get towards the end of the show, the beautiful thing is every successful entrepreneur, I would even say every successful human being, goes through very challenging times in life. And as you said, it's our failures and our struggles that make us stronger. I mean, when you look at the hero's journey, as part of narrations, it's so crucially important and makes the story worthwhile. Did you ever encounter that people would think of your vision and your mission in the sort of the opposite way and feel like, well, it's just a marketing plot, or here's somebody trying to sell us into, all the struggles and the hurdles and the positivity aspect and giving back, but it's just another way of trying to create a marketing framework around the brand. Did you ever encounter that? And if so, how do you deal with that? And how do you convince people that what you're doing is for real?
Look, the answer is, did I ever encounter that? I have to be honest with you, not really. I haven't, and that's just because I think the beautiful thing is none of this is a sell job. I just talk about my life, right? That's it. You don't want to buy cigars. I don't give a fuck. It's the answer. It's irrelevant to me. I'm not doing this because I need to make money, right? I don't want to lose money, but I'm not here to retire off this or do whatever, right? I want to sell as many fucking cigars as I can because it means I give back as much as I can. I'm brutally honest about that. Absolutely. And that's why I'm brutally open in terms of we'll post our sales, our gross profits, our net profits, and how much we're giving back. Because that's what we're about. And I think once you explain that to people and you show that you're very open, because we are, we've got nothing to hide, they sort of say, that's pretty different. That's pretty unique. It's not a snow job. It's reality. And if after I talk to someone and explain all that, they don't think that the cigar is right for them or they don't want to stock it, I'm cool. There's no issue. Like, mate, I appreciate the opportunity. It's fine. And they may not. Some of the retailers that we initially saw, they said, oh, we don't know, you got to blah, blah. So it's cool. It's no problems. I said, we just want to, have a conversation, have the opportunity, potentially with that opportunity, but we understand you've got plenty of stock there. You need to move it, you need to do whatever you need to do. So totally fine. But I feel I'm not here to sell anything to anybody. I'm here to make a difference. That's what I want to do, right? That's what drives me. This is the vehicle for me to do that, as opposed to some sort of wealth creation vehicle or whatever else. That's not what it is. And everyone that's invested alongside me, right, understands that. They obviously want a return, clearly, but I've been very clear to them. There are no dividends coming out of this company, right? Don't think this is a dividend company. At some point, it'll be sold, right? And that's where you make some money, right? But for me, when I sell it, it's the same concept. 40% of what I sell it for, the profits I sell it for, is going to go. It'll go into. People have asked me this question, and I said, well, it's pretty simple. 40% of what I sell it for, the net profit of what I sell it for, will go into a trust, and we're going to use that trust to build a corpus so we can continue to support these great causes afterwards, right? That's it. I don't get paid. I don't take a salary. I don't do any of that sort of stuff. Nothing. As I said, I'm fortunate, but so this is my, as I said to you, was my awakening. This is why I survived. This is why I got through, was to do this. Cigars are just the vehicle. Non-alcoholic beer is the vehicle. Sports clothing, ashwear is the vehicle for us to reach out.
Adam, it's very refreshing to hear that and to experience face to face, and even here via Zoom, your sincerity and your honesty and how you approach it, how you built this, not even business, but how you built this movement and the whole vision of L.O.F.B. And that's beautiful to experience, and I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity of meeting you face to face and learning more about the League of Fat Bastards. I wish you nothing but the very best, success, and most importantly, health and joy with everything that you do. And I hope that with our humble show and our community, we can help a little bit along the journey to spread the word and tell more people about what it is that you've experienced, what you've built on top of that, and what you want to give back to the world. And so thank you very, very much for sharing all of this with you and for everything that you do, man.
Right. Look, thank you. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate everyone giving up their time to come listen to me ramble on a little bit. So I apologize. I'm a little passionate about it, so I know I sometimes sort of ramble on, but that's just the way I am.
It's exactly the way it should be.
And I just hope that everyone can get a little bit out of maybe some of the ideas that we sort of talked about. I really wish everybody a very happy and healthy life, good mental health. I want everyone to be productive members of society, and just try and walk around with a smile, right? Because it just makes life so much better for everybody. So I appreciate it.
Amen. Adam Levine, the League of Fat Bastards. Thank you so much for joining us at the Light 'em Up Lounge. I'll see you in Dortmund, and until then, you take good care of yourself. And thanks again for sharing so much with us today. Much appreciated. Cheers, everybody. Another great Light 'em Up Lounge. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week, same time, same station. Until then, be well, stay healthy, and light 'em up. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for staying.